Have you ever walked against a problem where you have a service which is like 1,000 lines long and it just keeps on getting bigger and bigger? Well, today we're going to be looking at it and try to see how we can actually refactor this is something that makes sense, right? So I set up a simple project which should look really familiar if you've watched my previous series on writing cleaner code. Cleaner backends, I guess. We create a repository which talks to the database. We create a service which has all our business logic, well, most of it, and we have a controller which acts as our entry point for the user to interact with. So they can send a request from the client to the backend, right? So if I open Postman, you can see I'm sending a data title, content, and it returns me some data. That's basically all it does. But as you can also see, if I remove this, it still works because it's just a hack to get a project to get the point across. Okay, so let's look at this post service. As you can see, this post service has actually just one method, but let's imagine we have like 1,000 methods, right? So let's say we are going. So what I want to do now is actually look at the method create and think of, okay, so how can I abstract this, right? What is create doing? Well, create is basically a use case for our application. So something that I'm really fond of is use case driven development, which actually means that we take a use case, which can come from anywhere. It's not code related, like I don't know, buying something as a use case or getting data. I don't know. I can't think of real examples right now. Anyway, so what I want to do is take this and abstract it to its own use case and use this use case in my controller. So if I go to my controller, you can see this controller uses the post service and it calls create, gets a response and returns it. Okay, so if you look at this again, in use case terms, we have input, we do some logic, and we have output. So our input is the I create post request, our output is the create post response. And this would be our business logic. Well, there's no business logic right now, but you get the point, right? Okay, so let's get started. What I want to do first is, I can't see my cursor. Am I blind? Okay, maybe I'm blind. Let's create a file called create post use case.ts. Did I just put it in the wrong directory? I did. Okay. So in this file, I'm gonna create a class, create post use case, and it implements an interface. I'm using an interface because, well, in a real app, you would create multiple use cases, and it would make sense to have some kind of way to say, hey, this whole use case should look like, right? So it gets a request, it gets response, and it has one method, well, one public method that is, and in my case I would call it execute, and it returns always a promise of the response, and it always gets input. Well, sometimes it could be that it doesn't have input, but then we can just ignore it. Okay, so it implements our use case, and our use case is we get data, which was I create post request, and we have a response create post response, and now I can implement it, and as you can see, it generated this for us, which is really cool. So now I can go back to my post service. I can take this, move it in here. Let's take this constructor, because, well, coming off the type. Let's put it in here. Let's say import. Well, almost. And this should be async. Thank you, auto generation. Let's save this, and we have our use case. So now I can get rid of this post service, because this is not needed anymore. But if there were more methods left, then you could actually keep this, of course. Anyway, let's get rid of this one. Okay, so I'm using a new theme, but I just can't see the highlights on the left. That's rip. Post service. Let's get rid of this one. Let's create a new module quickly. Shared. And let's add our use case here. Let's use my mouse a little bit, because, well, I can't see my cursor, right? Am I blind? This one? Let's abstract this one and move it here. Export it. And there's a cool extension that I got. If I right click it, export all modules, and it exports the use case. And in here I can say import from shared. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so this one is still using post service, but it doesn't exist anymore, so let's get rid of it. And instead of post service, we're going to call it create post use case. And create post use case. Right, so now it's not create anymore, it's called execute, remember? Execute. Cool. Bootstrap. This one got the same problem. It's not post service anymore, it's create post use case. Create post use case. Save. Okay, service up and running. Let's try to run it. Send. Bang. We refactored our code. We got rid of our service. And we got a really nice use case. And this is what I would do with all my methods in my service. Sometimes you might have things that are shared, and then you can decide to either compose multiple use cases together by just like, let's say I need to do something here. I could like say do some other use case that execute, which is fine, but can get kind of tricky because you're creating dependencies between use cases, which is allowed as far as I know, but it makes it a bit harder. You could also create a facade, so then we could go back to our post service and we could like combine them here, right? So create post and do some other stuff, and then we could call like all the use cases in here, use case 1, 2, 3. That's another way. Or you could go in a more event driven way where you would say, okay, so after create we would have like an event bus, and we could say dispatch new post created event, and then somewhere else there would be a listener to this, and it would call the right use case. That way there's no dependency, no real dependency between them, which is really cool. And this is more of a domain driven design concept in a way, but also not. Anyway, okay, that's that. I hope this makes sense, and see you in the next video.